Here reporting live from the National Retirement Living Summit in beautiful Brisbane 2025, and I am joined by the lovely Steph Cittarelli from carepage.
Hi, Jacob.
Hello Steph, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Very well, very well. So can
Fantastic.
you please tell me what is going on? Are you seeing any trends CX-wise in terms of retirement living?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot to be said of retirement living kind of moving into the 21st century and moving to a place where they're looking at feedback not as a one-time thing and looking at always-on feedback, which is really important, looking at different ways to collect that feedback. It might be digital, it might be paper, it might be interviews. However they're doing that, it's really changing the game, I think, when they're capturing that feedback. And they're making sure that it's accessible and the data's really there for them when they need it to learn more about their residents and what they need and what they want from a lifestyle community or a retirement village.
So taking a proactive approach.
Absolutely, yeah, taking a proactive approach, making sure that feedback is what we call always on, which means that when you have feedback to give, you're able to give it in the moment. You don't have to wait for an annualised survey, you don't have to wait for a specific forum or a committee to happen. You kind of can give that feedback when and in the moment. And we know that in the moment, feedback is always more accurate. It's always kind of more true to the experience for the individual.
Yep.
And so they can really capture different types of insights and insights that are way more detailed and way more accurate for any provider.
Have you seen any change in regards to the needs and wants of people going into retirement living over the last 5 to 10 years? Obviously, generations are changing and people are going to have different wants and needs. I'm sure the music that's playing now won't be playing when you're in retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for reminding me about when I'll be in
He
retirement.
loves Limp Bizkit. That's what will be playing for him.
I think that, look, the baby boomer generation is moving into retirement,
Yep.
Probably for the first time. And they're going to have vastly different requirements for how they engage in their lives and how they participate in their lives than previous generations have had before them. They are a generation who is familiar with technology. They're a generation who is familiar with social media. So understanding how to capture, I guess, that audience for retirement living providers is going to be paramount, treating them more as consumers of a service as opposed to an inevitability, which
Yep.
maybe retirement has been treated as before. They're discerning consumers. They know what they want and when they want it, and they want to live their lives with Netflix in their pocket or in their rooms or in their homes, and understanding what that technology looks like for those individuals and those cohorts is going to be really, really important. So I think access to technology is probably going to be the biggest shift in the kind of needs and wants of consumers as we move into this kind of baby boomer generation moving into retirement. And so really that's going to change what services are offered by retirement living providers and what technologies are there available for them.
So how are providers these days, do you think they're more likely to start walking that tightrope between, obviously when someone goes into retirement, you don't want to put that stigma on them that they're in care because that's something that people are avoiding. And
Yep.
when you start talking about feedback and that sort of thing, that can sort of have connotations with care. Do you think providers are getting better at separating that?
Look, I hope they're getting better. I'm not sure if they are necessarily moving as quickly as we'd want them to. I think there's probably a lot more kind of scope for retirement living providers to move quicker in that space.
Yep.
But I definitely think there's a lot of marketing out there that shows them as very different to care. So I hope they continue with that and they look at feedback much more transactionally, much more consumer focused and much more customer experience focused.
Yep.
They're seeing their residents as customers and customers who are purchasing a service, and so that it's relational and transactional, I think is going to be the kind of biggest change and one they need to kind of follow on with.
Looking into the future now, do you foresee a time when retirement will have the same sort of regulation in regard to data capture and customer experience that aged care currently does?
I certainly think there's some kind of talk and some movement around that. I think regulating retirement is probably going to come to the fore a lot more, understanding what they need to have and when and making sure, and the government making sure that those things are in place is something that a lot of people have been talking about. I'm not, I can't see the future, so it might not happen. But if it does, I think it will remain to be seen that those that can kind of jump on board as early as possible and have a customer experience program in already means that they're kind of already kind of in front of the curve or ahead of the curve.
Yep.
I think that's probably going to be the biggest differentiator, is that they have a program that's in place. They have employees and teams who understand what feedback is, understand how valuable it is, and are using it to their advantage before it becomes prescribed and regulated. I think they're the providers and the operators that are really going to kind of win the game.
Yeah, and I mean, even if it doesn't become mandatory, you would imagine that it would still be the hallmark of a provider that's doing their utmost to ensure that they're meeting the needs of the people coming into their retirement
100%.
village.
You know, in the consumer world, you know, the Apples and the Googles of the world are kind of held up as the kind of leaders in that space from a customer experience perspective, particularly Apple in their retail environment and their overall customer service. And so, you know, there's nothing mandated about transacting in a retail environment in any country that means that they have to capture feedback and improve their service. They'd want to, because it ultimately means that they'll make more money.
Yeah.
So that type of idea and that progressive idea in retirement living is something that I would hope that everybody kind of captures and runs with, and they kind of look at their consumers as I mentioned, as you know, a marketing consumer base and a discerning consumer base that needs those options, or else they're going to get left behind.
Amen. Steph, thank you very, very much for joining me.
Thanks,
Enjoy the
Jacob.
conference.
Thank you.